Hello and welcome back to the channel. I have finally managed to upload new editing software, so I will 100% be producing more content for my channel. I have also officially decided that I'm not going to be creating my own content on TikTok anymore, and I'm probably not going to be participating on that app much at all anymore. I am simply over the lack of mature communication that happens in most social media spaces. I just cannot do it anymore. Yesterday was my birthday, and I went book shopping. Most of these books were not here before I went to the bookstore yesterday. A varied selection. I bought myself a copy of Ulysses because I have never read it. And because of that, because I never actually read it in school when I was learning about literature, I wanted to go back and read it now that I am more into reading in general, not just as a hobby, but, with content creation and everything. So that was something that, that's going to be something that takes up quite a bit of my reading time. And my mindless scrolling through TikTok it's just not conducive to reading as anything more than just a passing hobby. If I want to make creating content around books less of a hobby, more of something like I can actually do something with, TikTok is not the platform for that. The few book influencers that I was following, I had to block, and the experience on that app just hasn't been the same since. So I don't think that I'll be going back. I haven't even reconnected with many of my former mutuals simply because I am not interested in doing so. Not because I don't think that they'd remutual me if they found me and whatever. I just, again, not interested. That being said, I have not decided quite yet how I want to approach booktube content. I am currently reading so many different books, and then I want to get started on so many of the ones that... Okay, I bought 3 V.E. Schwab books. I'm reading the Darker Shades of Magic trilogy, so I bought the second book in that. I bought Vicious because I am really into superheroes, and I was told that that's the book to read. And then I also bought The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. It's interesting, V.E. Schwab, because I have people who say that they trust my recommendations, and they like my recommendations, and that, they've enjoyed what I've recommended, who've said that they hated... I'm pretty sure the person said that they DNF'd Vicious and had no interest in reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. But V.E. Schwab is one of my favorite authors currently. So it's just interesting to me how tastes within book spaces can be so vastly different. I also wanted to shed some light on a situation that came up for me on Fable that I believe is a problem in bookish spaces. Not necessarily with the readership in those spaces, but again, the way that book spaces are run with toxic positivity. This whole, we can't be negative, and it's bullying to, hold people accountable for the negative things that they say in bookish spaces about readers. Like, nobody wants to talk about how certain kinds of readers completely destroy. They don't just sour the experience of reading for social media, they fucking destroyed it. Like, I have zero interest anymore in bookish social media from anything other than, a promotion of my YouTube channel standpoint. Because of that, because certain book influencing, like, I don't need to be influenced to participate in a hobby that I've been doing since I was 4 years old, right? I read my first chapter book when I was 4. Why am I being accused of bullying the guy who expects me to prove it? Prove that you can read so much. I wish we could test people. I'm sorry. Stuff like that needs to be bullied out of bookish spaces. And I am called the bully, and I am framed as the bad person for even having that opinion, let alone acting on it. Bookish spaces should not be about influencing, because influencing is what turns this bullshit into a fucking competition. And it's always comes down against disabled people. Always. With the audiobook argument, everybody always talks about how, it's valid to read audiobooks. Nobody talks about why. Nobody talks about the accessibility aspect of it unless they themselves are also disabled. When disabled people should be the first people in the front of the conversation about audiobooks not being reading. Because if audiobooks are not reading, then there are an awful lot of people who can't read if they can't listen to a book. And that the fact that that is not centered as the main reason why people need to stop criticizing audiobooks, then there's no point. If you're not bringing up audiobooks as an accessibility tool, why are you bringing it up, kind of thing? Like, it's like it gets brought up just to give people a reason to fight, which is another compelling reason why influencing in a space like Book Talk or Bookstagram or reading books at all, it just doesn't fucking make sense to me. Right? Like, if you take my recommendations, that's great. That's why I review books, but that's why I review books and, like, leave reviews where reviews go, right? Like, my goal isn't to be a good little marketer for anybody, right? Like, I'm not being paid by authors or by publishers. So, to me, any attempts to become an influencer without that sort of, like, acknowledgement is simply ego. Why is how I feel about reading and what books are good and what authors are worth consuming, why is that so much more important than what anybody else thinks? Right? Like, reading books, it's not like makeup, right? You can objectively have makeup that is better or worse than the other. Like, it's just objectively, it leaves creases, it dries funny, it flakes off. There are objective reasons why we need makeup influencers, right? Because I couldn't tell you about the chemical makeup of lipstick and why it's important to have certain products on your skin and certain, like, why is primer important? Why is it important to put a barrier of moisture between your skin and the makeup that you're about to put on, that kind of thing. Those are things that are important to know because those are, aspects of makeup that are objective, right? It's not subjective that a makeup that creases in your lip lines, right? Or that a highlighter that creases that you can see start to flake off down your across your waterline. That's objectively you've applied the makeup poorly or it's not a good brand. The same thing doesn't apply to books, right? Like, as you can see, my collection, like, aside from telling you not to read problematic authors, who the fuck am I to say that any one book is more important or better than another, or that you are doing reading wrong if you don't read the way that I do? Like, to me, that's what influencing is. Do it the way that I do it, because that's the best way to do it. And there's really no other way to enjoy this hobby. That's what influencing is. You see the influencer enjoying something so much that you have to get into it too. And to me, that just is not conducive to what I feel is a positive reading environment as a reader, and I don't feel like it's positive for me as a reviewer either, because it's just the alarm on my iPad would not stop going off, and I I thought I could just leave it, but I couldn't. But I often wonder how many good books that I might have missed out on, because I assume that if one influencer that I respect and follow hated it, I must hate it too. To some degree, yes, I trust the recs from certain influencers, right? Like, but I have been in a situation, I'm not going to name any names, and I won't name names if I'm asked, so don't even. But there is an influencer who gets arcs from publishers. They are, acknowledged in bookish spheres by traditional publishing as somebody whose opinion to respect as far as, book influencing. And of course, as somebody who used to be mutuals with them, I took their suggestions. I read V. Castro on their suggestion. Gabino Iglesias was another one that I read on her suggestion. And then there was one book that she recommended that was a fantasy book that I really thought I would like because it had a good premise. And the way that she talked about it, I was just like, oh my God, I have to read this. I think I might have to DNF it. And that is precisely my point. Like, why are we putting so much emphasis on the book influencers whose opinions are infallible and we always trust them about everything they say when shit like that happens? And instead of saying, this is, not maybe the best written book, but I like it, and you might too, I really felt like this influencer used those tools as an influencer to sort of manipulate people into checking out this book. And it's one thing to feel like I'm being manipulated into buying a product. Books aren't just products. Books are portals into other worlds. They are how we escape and take adventures and how we learn things about other people. And influencing has turned books into nothing but products, nothing but something to sell and market, as opposed to something we enjoy and appreciate because we appreciate it, right? I'm not going to try to trump up some book falsely and lie to you about it. I'm going to say, hey, this is like for instance, This is the best freaking example, okay? Electric Idol by Katie Robert. All smut, no substance. My favorite book I've read so far this year. The perfect example. I'm not going to sit there and tell anybody that this is a master of modern literature, because it's not. But it also doesn't have to be a book that's worth reading. And I think that people have gotten lost in the sauce on that concept when it comes to book influencing. So if you want to follow me because you like the Rex and you like the way I talk about books and you have fun hanging out here, that's great. But I'm not ever going to be that person. You like what you like. And as long as you're being honest about what you like about something, I'm always going to support people reading what they want to read. It's when these influencers lie and feel like they have to lie about the content or the quality of a book to get people to read it. Because 9 times out of 10, you see somebody with dark romance books covering their shelves, they are not going to care if you say this dark romance is all smut, no substance, because that's literally what 99% of us are into the genre for in the first place. Right? Like, you don't turn to romance for a cerebral story in the first place. So one thing that I'm focusing on is getting some of that disingenuous crap out of my space. Like, that's not the kind of discussions I'm going to be having about the books that I read. And I don't want any influencers like that in my space anymore. Like, I joined Diverse Book Talk and followed those creators to get a feel for how to find more diverse reading selections. I know how to find more diverse reading now. It's easy as hell to find diverse reading on Fable. I'm not familiar with Storygraph or Goodreads, but on Fable, there are clubs dedicated to to BIPOC fantasy, to, I'm in a group for asexual literature. I'm in another group for asexual nonfiction. There's a group for trans nonfiction that got started for the Trans Rights Readathon. I'm in the group Colors of the Cosmos, which every month we read a new fantasy and science fiction book by a Black author. It's possible I wanted to keep this video under 20 minutes. This is going to be the last thing I'm going to say. If you need book influencing to tell you what to read, you're not who those Diverse Book Talk videos are for. Those Diverse Book Talk videos are a circle jerk for them to pat each other on the back that they are doing the right thing by making diverse selections. Nobody cares. So if you are the kind of person that says, oh, I love these influencers, people need them. No, they don't. Because the only thing that diverse book influencers encourage people to do, they encourage people to read diversely. That's not the problem. The problem is when you have influencers who are sitting there and spoon feeding you diverse recommendations. That is why people are too lazy to go and find it themselves. That's why. And all these book influencers are going, I don't understand why every Black History Month people won't look for this themselves. That's why. Because they know you as a book influencer will do it for them, because that's literally your goddamn job as an influencer. De-influence your bookshelves. Don't just diversify, de-influence. I am currently in the middle of A Touch of Malice, which is the 3rd book in the Hades and Persephone series by Scarlett St. Clair. I am going to pick one of the books that I got for my birthday to start, and I am currently reading Will Do Magic for Small Change on my Kindle, in addition to I'm sorry, something popped up on my screen, but in addition to reading Blood Marked, I have so many books to keep track of with my library books and all that. Oh, this is another thing that I want to come and talk about, make a video about. I am currently reading The House of Hidden Meetings, which is RuPaul's memoir. And then I'm also reading Some New Kind of Kick, which is Kid Congo Power's memoir. He is the former lead guitarist of the Cramps, and he is a Mexican queer person who had a revolutionary impact on punk music as the guitarist of the Cramps. I feel like everybody learned their lesson about not promoting Black literature only during Black History Month. There's a trans rights readathon for Trans Day of Visibility, and I have feelings about the people who've chosen to visibly participate in that on social media. I believe that queer stories shouldn't be just for the trans rights, readathon. It shouldn't just be for Pride Month. But people don't seem to understand that. People don't seem to understand that Black queer people exist and are writing books. Like, if you say, oh, I've diversified my bookshelf, but you're still only reading cis Black stories or heterosexual Black stories, you're not diversifying shit. It's wild to me. It's wild to me, the performative aspects of bookish spaces also, that people they don't seem to like. Great, so you read books by trans authors. That's awesome. How does that materially help the fact that we are currently losing our rights at an unprecedented rate in this country, that trans people are set up once again to be the scapegoats for fascists? Like, I think I saw one major influencer, and she was a Black influencer. None of the white influencers who are talking about participating in the trans rights readathon have done anything to bring awareness to the reality of what it's like living as a trans person in the US. Don't bother participating in the readathon if you're not donating money to trans charities, if you're not using your live access to raise awareness about the trans genocide, right? Everybody talks about Palestine and uses the word genocide when they talk about Palestine. The only thing that trans people in the only piece of a genocide that trans people in the US have not faced yet is being actively corralled into spaces where they can then kill us. That is the only step in the trans genocide in the US that we have not reached yet. And people still won't use the word genocide. You'll use the word genocide for Palestine, for Congo, for Sudan. But you won't use the word genocide when it comes to Native Americans and the Native Indigenous population here in America. And you won't recognize the trans genocide that's happening right under your fucking noses. I made a TikTok video and several posts about it on Fable, and I'll say it again. I am not participating in the trans rights readathon. One, because it's not my job to dismantle systemic transphobia and bigotry in publishing as a trans person. That's y'all's job as cis people. And two, I'm not participating in something that I believe is performative, because nobody is mentioning the political reason why we are doing this readathon. It's literally the trans rights readathon, to raise awareness about what is happening to trans people in the US. If you're not going to use the word genocide this week, don't bother participating, because the trans genocide in the US is literally the reason for the readathon in the first place. So those are going to be some of the things that I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be... I haven't decided if I really do want to talk about From Beyond on this channel. As you know, Reanimator is one of my favorite movies, but I do have feelings about platforming race science and the Nazi obsession with the occult, because it is something that I do heavily criticize in Lovecraft's work, and I feel like it's something that should be criticized in Lovecraft's work. The obsession with cheating death is exactly why Nazi scientists did these psychotic experiments that they did on disabled and gay and Jewish people. So I'm gonna have to, I did restart my subscription to Shudder. So I think what I'm gonna do as far as horror content is go back through the Shudder catalog, see if there's anything else that I think I might enjoy, and get back to you on that. So if you don't currently follow me on Instagram, go ahead and do that. I will leave the Ko-fi in the description, my Ko-fi, I'm sorry, in the description of the video. I currently don't have it set up to where any of my content is limited by subscription. So if you want to go and check out what I'm about, you can feel free to do that. I'm also going to be posting blog posts about books that I have big feelings about that I need to process before I can post my review. So that's going to be something you want to watch out for too. And I am now pushing 30 minutes, even though I said I wanted to keep this to 20 minutes. But that should make this a little bit more of an algorithmically friendly video. That being said, to recap, I guess, my read through of Ulysses, keep your eye out for that. I think the first book that I'm gonna pick here is probably gonna be Black Sun, because I was in the middle of that from the library anyway. So that's probably where I'm gonna start with my birthday books, and then stay tuned for my review of Alone with You in the Ether. This is one of those big feeling books that brought up big feelings. So you don't want to make sure that you keep up with that. And have a happy reading. I was gonna say have a good weekend and happy reading. Have a happy reading. That's what comes out. Have a good weekend and happy reading.